Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion.
Today I have the honor of having him speak here at Charter Senior Living of Towson. He's representing all of our Charter Senior Living communities in Maryland. We have 6 of those. There's a map out there that you can get with all of those. And he's going to talk about solo agers. What are those questions that you may have, or what are those questions that you need to start thinking about? Steve's here to help you to begin navigate that journey. So thank you, Steve, and all that you've done for the aging population. We appreciate you.
Holy cow. That's I talked to the Charter team, and we talked about a bunch of ideas, but this topic of solo aging, when we host a webinar, we get twice as many people to our solo aging webinars on any other topic. And it seems like a topic that we're all getting more comfortable talking about. And I think part of it is because with COVID, we recognize how loneliness and isolation is not healthy. And therefore, being solo at any age has its complications. And so I love talking about this, and it's going to be apparent why shortly. But the other thing is, just because today's topic is solo aging, I want to make sure we can talk about anything and everything that's on your mind, whether it be aging in place or finding purpose or medical issues and a diagnosis, memory care, things like that. It's all relatable. So just raise your hand and shout out your question as you see fit. And to that event, to that extent, I gave this presentation like this not too long ago. And what I wanted to do is, because what frustrates me sometimes is I go to a lecture and I sit there for an hour and I already know the question I want to ask the speaker when I walked in the door. It's sort of like the title of the program. Oh, I got a question for that guy, but I got to sit there for an hour before I can ask the question. And so I like starting with questions, okay? But I wanted to prime the pump. I wanted to share with you some of the questions that I had from one of my last discussions on solo aging. I'm desperately looking for someone I can appoint as my medical power of attorney. I do not want a guardian. Please give me resources. How can I find a trustworthy person to pay bills in case I have cognitive decline? How does a solo ager engage in the community activities and build connections if they're an introvert? Helping a solo's personal care, comfort medical care with limited finances and possible dementia. And somebody says, please discuss options for continuing care for solo agers. And the last question I have on the screen, but certainly not the last question that was asked, is, as a couple, when do you talk about and prepare for solo aging? So those are some questions that I'll cover today because I covered them in that program. But out of curiosity, does anybody have something that they'd like me to discuss or talk about today? Yeah. So the question was a little bit more about guardianship, and then for our proxies, our healthcare and financial proxies, having backups, having other people that could serve. If, let's say, your healthcare proxy is in California, and you've got a healthcare issue here in Maryland, what do you do? I'll try to do that. I also, there's two qualifiers that I want to tell y'all. I've talked to so many experts on these topics that I feel like I've gleaned a ton of great information, but I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm just a guy that really wants to help other people, okay? And so take a lot of the topic things that I'm going to talk about. I want them to stimulate ideas and new ways of looking at this weird world of growing older that we all live in. But I also want to let you all know that I left my magic wand back in Reston, Virginia, okay? If it worked and if I had one that was a real magic wand, it would be going nonstop. But unfortunately, there are a lot of problems and questions. Oh, look at this. Hey, guys, there's magic. Our food is being served on magic wands, okay? This is great. I was wondering where that was. Okay, but so just, we'll do our best as a team. We're going to talk about working as a team here. We're gonna solve a lot of problems. So my first little soapbox thing on this topic is that we are all solo agers, okay? And also, this is breaking news, okay? We're all aging too, and guess what? We're aging at this exact same rate as some of your 5-year-old grandchildren. Aging does not begin with an AARP card. It begins on the delivery room table, but the way we use the language is, it's like, oh, that's aging. You never hear a 16-year-old say that, but he's aging at the same rate as we are, okay? When it comes to the topic of solo aging, we're all solo agers. The context that I'm going to frame this in, I'm married with 2 kids, but I am almost positive me and my wife are not going to die on the same day, okay? One of us is going to live longer than the other. One of us might be each other's caregivers. But we could get lucky and both of us die in our sleep on my 85th birthday. That's what I'm praying for, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But so it's in my best interest and all of our best interest to just think about what would life be like without my wife, and giving that some thought. Now, I got 2 kids, but as Christy had said, they're 22 and 19, if something happened to me today, I trust everybody in this room more than I trust my kids, just so you know. Okay, but so what I say here on this slide is, married or single, surrounded by family or not, aging and living is a solo act. And it's a personal process that each of us navigates our own way. And especially for you, all the healthcare professionals that are in the audience, we know that because, you can talk to one of your clients in the morning and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, let's go to our assisted livings. This is awesome. And then in the afternoon, you got somebody who's telling you, no way, no, that's not for me. That's because we're all different, okay? All right, so let's see what I got next. Okay, so on the topic of solo aging, there's starting to be more research and more studies being done on this topic. And just so y'all know, what they used to call solo aging, get your hankies out, because I cry every time I even say this. They used to call them elder orphans, okay? Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. And solo aging, it's empowering. I mean, it's great. Orphans' lives are out of control, but as we're solo aging, things are in our control. But obviously, if it's related to aging and growing older, AARP has done some research in this area, and one of the things that they recognized is that on a wide variety of topics, people that identify as solo agers are about 10 to 15% more concerned about various topics than the general population. So all of us, whether identify as a solo ager, are concerned about things, losing our independence, not having enough money, being alone without family or friends, not being able to stay in our current home, being moved somewhere against our will, or needing help with the Everybody is concerned about that, okay? But in general, people that identify as solo agers are about 10 to 15% more concerned. Now, I think that's a good thing. And one of the reasons I think that's a good thing is on a daily basis, I am talking to adult children who are flying in town from California because mom and dad refuse to have conversations or do any thinking or planning, and now a problem has occurred and the kids are picking up the pieces, okay? But the reason people identify as solo agers, because like me, they recognize that their kids aren't gonna fly into town, or if they do, it might be a week late, okay? So this is one of the reasons I love when I connect with people that are open to a dialogue around thinking about or planning for the fact that they might be on their own at some point in time, is because it gives us security. While we're healthy, it helps us make better connections. It's empowering. It's sort of like, I'm in charge of this now. It's not just like, oh, somebody will pick me up off the floor if I fall down. And it gives us a sense of purpose in why, how we're living, whether we have healthcare challenges or changes or not. So now, I'm glad Christy brought up me moving into the senior living communities. So just to kind of rewind on that, I'm 59 years old now, but when I was 43, I kind of came to the conclusion, people were calling me a senior housing expert. And it's sort of like, wait a second, it's kind of like working in a restaurant, but not eating the food in the restaurant, And so I proposed to one of the communities. I said, hey, they asked me a question about something. I said, hey, could I come here and stay for a little bit as sort of as a resident, and maybe I could better answer your question? And they looked at me funny, and they're, wow, you do that? And about 2 weeks later, they called me back and said, we'll let you do that. And it really kicked off just an awesome journey. I really enjoyed that. I can't do that now. Back then I didn't have gray hair. Like if I moved in here today, I wouldn't be special. But in any event, one of the things that I came up with when I moved into the community was this four-legged stool. And how I created this was because my fellow neighbors in the communities that I was living with, most of them were there because one or all four legs of the stool were a little bit weaker. And by moving into the community, they could live life with meaning and purpose, okay? And I've been using this a lot more lately in helping solo agers with coming up with a plan. Because one of the things on my podcast, I have solo aging thought leaders and experts from all over. And folks that have written books and things of that nature that teach classes on solo aging. And after one of the podcasts, I had like 2 or 3 people that said, just tell me what I need to start doing now. Like it was getting way too academic and complex. And so today I'm going to walk you through a 3-step process that whether it's for yourself, your mom and dad, or your loved ones, that might help you sort of feel more empowered and prepared if somebody or yourself is in a solo aging situation. And to kick off the planning, in my opinion, the planning's it can be easy. It doesn't need to be complex. And we're going to start with just asking ourselves 4 questions, okay? The first leg of the stool is getting around, meaning driving if you live in a suburban, car-dependent neighborhood. People in New York City don't care about this leg of the stool, okay? If you live in New York City or Chicago, it's a 3-legged stool. Because most of the people I know that are lifelong New York City, Big Apple people, they've never had a driver's license. they can get to all the best culture just by waving their hand and a car comes and picks them up, and they're not embarrassed about that at all. However, when I live on Main Street and I'm not driving in my personal car and a cab is picking me up, it has a different message that oftentimes impacts my stigma. So, what are my options if I'm unable or prefer not to drive? Just thinking about that. What does that look like? I gave this talk like this a couple of months ago, and I was surprised because a woman called me and she said, you know, I took all the legs of your stool and I tried it out for a week, okay, to see what my life was like without my car. And I'll talk about some other things. And I was fascinated. It was great. I mean, she was sort of like, look, I'd never ridden the bus, and I figured out how to ride the bus from the end of my street. It's not that bad. So, getting around, if I'm unable to drive. Okay, number two, how can I navigate my living space more easily if mobility is a challenge? Now, unfortunately, here in the East Coast, we're in love with 3- and 4-story homes, okay? And what that means is usually our bedroom's on the top floor, right? So if we've got mobility issues, that can compromise our purpose in the current space that we're living in. And for some of us, I mean, the amount of steps just to get into our home can often be a burden. Now, there's solutions to all this stuff, and we can talk about it, okay? You know, there's Uber, Lyft to help us get around if we don't have a car. There's a concept called universal design where we can remodel our homes to just be homes of a lifetime, okay? But the time to do those types of things is not when we're in the hospital. It's before that happens, and that's why I like asking these questions, okay? So question number 3, our personal village, which I'm really going to talk a lot about today, is what steps can I take if I feel disconnected from my neighbors or the community? That's your personal village, and that's something that is very important. I talk to a lot of people, and most people that I talk to say, I'm aging in place, okay? Not leaving here. I love this neighborhood. And I'll oftentimes brainstorm with them a little bit, and it's like, and we get to the point, hey, tell me about your neighbors in the community. And I won't say like 9 out of 10 times, but let's say 7 out of 10 times, they'll start telling me stories about 20, 30 years ago, about the babysitting co-op, the bus stop, and all this stuff. And what it made me realize, we have I'm guilty of this too. You know, our home, our neighborhood, and especially if we've raised kids there, there's, you know, a lot of our identity is tied into that. And oftentimes I help people realize that, hey, let's get connected to the neighborhood now. Now, here's another thing that I've discovered when I have conversations like that, is that oftentimes the elders in our neighborhoods will say things like, oh, I don't want to bother the families. They're all busy with their kids and their jobs and things like that. And I have never seen a situation where we coordinated a connection between an elder in the neighborhood and a family that didn't end in a real positive note. You know, tutoring the kids, going on grocery shopping trips together. But it just requires getting outside of our comfort zone, which I'm going to give you some solutions on how we can get here in a bit. And then my last question, and this is the one that even just thinking about it and the conversations that I've had just sometimes puts tears in my eyes, is how should I approach life if I experience cognitive changes such as dementia? This is one of those things that, you know, no matter how well we eat, how many Scrabble exercises and brain games we do, how much exercise and all the things the doctors tell us do to get more cognitive reserve, none of us have a crystal ball. Dementia and cognitive impairment can impact all of us. And just asking that question and framing it in a way that we might be able to have a plan if someday something like that happened. Now, I like that one up too, because the daughter that comes in from California, sometimes it's because mom has a diagnosis and she's living alone and she's wandering, or the home is not safe, but mom said, and the daughter took the word, mom told me never move her into one of those places, and oftentimes that's just not appropriate. And so whenever I hear somebody say that, I always tell them, it's one of the reasons why you want to ask these questions. Because on a question like this, how should I approach life if cognitive changes make it unsafe in my home? Well, one solution is to move to a home where you can be safe, but if you tell your daughter and your loved ones, never move me, it could be very complicated. Okay, I'm gonna take just a quick break and check in with y'all. Everything cool so far with what I said? Okay, so now this is the thing that I love talking about. It's building our personal village. And forget about solo aging. Building our personal village is the secret to having a purposeful, productive life, regardless of what our age is. But the way that we can save money, it's a way that we can have new friendships. It's a way that we can have support if we need it, but it's also a way that we can help other people no matter what our current situation is. And so I'm going to walk you through my 3-step process. And again, I'm going to give all this stuff to Christy. She can email it out to y'all if you want to share it with other folks. I don't really think anybody needs to take notes. But so step 1 is identify and reflect. Now, here's something. So how many people in the room remember having Rolodexes on their desk? Yeah. And the younger people, they don't know what that is. They use a CRM, okay? But here's the thing. Our businesses that we worked for couldn't have survived if we didn't have the Rolodex, the CRM, and the HR department. Because we need to know what everybody in the organization is doing and be able to communicate with them at any point in time, or else that business is going out of business. But in the business of life, what do? We just casually stroll through life. We make friends, we have family, and things are great. And they just are great until they're not so great anymore, okay? So what I want you to think about when we talk about a personal village, it's sort of like it's our own personal HR system where we're going to identify all the friends, families, neighbors, community organizations, professional providers that are in our life today. And it could be the dry cleaner that you see once a week and is friendly to you, the checkout guy at Safeway. It could be your next door neighbor, but I just recommend to folks, just make a list of these folks, okay? And use whatever kind of tool that works best for you. If you like working on the computer, type them into the computer. If you got a little notebook, just make a little notebook out of it. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to reflect on our goals, priorities, and areas where we might need more support, okay? Now, I kind of break this down into 3 groups. And the first one is my fun group, okay? Because, like, for example, let's say that I leave this discussion today and I go and I start working on my personal village. Today, the most important thing is my personal purpose inventory, okay? Now, Christy shared with you some of the things that I'm involved with today. I may not be involved with the same things 10, 20 years from now, but like as an example, I like riding my bike, I like swimming and things like that. And so those are things that give me purpose in life. And but let's say that I was injured and I can't do those 2 activities, and that's what happens to most of us. It's sort of like, and I remember a guy walked in my office, he was a big golfer, and he goes, "Oh, my life is over. I threw my back out. I can't play golf anymore." And I had to remind him, there's millions of things to do out there in the world besides playing golf. A lot of times we have things we are very passionate about, and if we need to modify or give those up, things can change. But this one guy that I was talking to, I said, well, why don't you, since you can't play golf, but you love being around golfers, why don't you work part-time in the pro shop and you get to talk to everybody? He was like, holy cow, I never thought about that. I was just gonna wall away on my couch watching golf by myself, till my back got better. Okay, so thinking about the things that give you passion, and when I'm talking to older adults about this, and adult children, it's also what gave you passion 10, 20 years ago. Like, this could be an opportunity to reinvigorate something that you're really knowledgeable at or gave you joy many years ago, okay? Identify vulnerabilities, and this is where a lot of times when the folks that are calling me in a more urgent situation, it's like, hey, I'm a solo ager, and we'll dive into this later. It's one of my vulnerabilities is, Steve, if I did get dementia and I'm living here in this apartment by myself, who's going to look out after me? And that's something that person was concerned about, so we're going to make that a vulnerability. And then spotting opportunities, and I'm going to share that with you as well. On my next thing, and my step 2 is, so now you got your personal village and you've written it down. It's not accidental. And here's the other thing, whether it be for yourself or a loved one, sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll be like, holy cow, hey, Steve, I did the list. I've only got 4 people on it. I really feel embarrassed. And I'm like, no. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, I remember a conversation I had with a woman. I said, why are you feeling embarrassed at telling me that? And she goes, because I always had this huge social network. And as she told me about it, she worked in a huge office and a lot of socialization was going on in the office. And, she had kids and she was friends with the other families, and that was a big thing. And, fortunately, this woman was, close to 90 years old. She had outlived a lot of her social circle, which had her down to these key 4 people. But by strategically looking at those 4, what she could offer them, what they could offer her, we started to build and grow this network. And just a couple of ideas: reach out and nurture relationships through offering help to others, check-ins, and ask for support. So again, I've sort of learned by accident in talking about this. I've modified this program quite a few times because I used to say, hey, make your list and then reach out to everybody in your network. And this one lady, she goes, man, I didn't have very much luck. And I was like, well, what happened? And she goes, well, I did what you said. I called all my friends and I said, if I need help, will you help me? And so I said, okay, no. The best way to figure out who is willing to help us is to tell the people in our lives what we would do to help them, okay? And if we're alive, there's always something we can do, And so, for example, with this woman, instead of saying, hey, if I needed a ride from the doctors, would you give it to me? My suggestion was, I learned that she liked to bake. And in fact, that was something, when she went back, she didn't have people to bake for. She was alone now. And I was like, you can get back into baking and you can bake stuff for all your friends, and that can be the conversation piece. And it's sort of like, hey, I got some cookies for you, but I love cooking and baking, and I would love to make you a meal anytime. Now, here's how you can tell who's in your network that is a helper and who's not. If the response is, oh, thank you, see you later, then you got a good friend, but you don't have somebody that's going to probably step up to the plate. But a percentage of all of our network is going to say, wow, And I would do the same for you. I know you don't like to drive at night. You just call me anytime and I'll give you a ride, And so that's one technique there. Now, we got a lot of professionals in the audience today, which is awesome, because what we want to do is we want to supplement our personal network of friends, families, and neighbors with providers. So, for example, what I have on the table here is one of the goals might be to have a healthcare advocate. If you suddenly found yourself in the hospital, somebody that could understand and speak for you. And the current situation is a cousin that lives out of town. Well, we could supplement that with a aging life care manager or a patient advocate. But now is the time to develop that relationship while we're helping. Not when we're in the hospital. Whoops. Not when we're in the hospital. All right. It might be. The bright lights aren't bumping around. Move my phone there, and then just press the button on top.
Oh, it went up. You're right. I think.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay. I see it. Can you guys hear me yet? Okay. I wonder if I changed the channel.
Test.
Does yours work, Christy?
Test. No, it keeps going out now.
Okay.
Go ahead and talk loud. I'll go get the plug.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm gonna talk loud. So supplementing our current family, friends, and what have you with providers. One of the things that a lot of times people are nervous about, especially if you suddenly find yourself being a solo ager. Like when I first started talking about this, all of our conversations came towards making friends. And most of the people were saying, look, when my wife was alive, she was like the cruise ship director. I haven't made a friend in 40 years. And, now I got to kind of get out there. And we had a lot of great discussions on how you make friends. And one of the easiest ways is just joining groups, clubs of things that you're interested in. And I know it's not that easy, but it's not that easy because we haven't done it for so many years. But a real fun one for the older adults is volunteering in theaters and performance venues. And, you got it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wish we had a mic.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Ellen, and I volunteer, but...
Hello? Okay, here, Ellen.
Hi, I just wanted to share about volunteering because I volunteer actually for the Alzheimer's Association, but I'm also on the advisory board for one of the best kept secrets in Baltimore County called RSVP. It's under the Department on Aging, and it stands for Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and it's like a warehouse with 31 partners of nonprofits that will help anyone 55 or older who would like to volunteer, whether you're an introvert or not. And they will help you and work with you, and you can connect and decide what you want to try and learn more about these 31 partners. So I highly recommend that. It's a great resource locally.
I love it. And actually, I'm glad you reminded, because one of my questions was, how do I meet people as an introvert or what have you? The way that introverts, and believe it or not, I mean, I've just exercised a social muscle, but I'm like an introvert. And when I go anywhere, I like to have a job, like it's very hard for me to go to like one of those Chamber of Commerce kind of like just walk around and talk to people. I'll sometimes go to those things like, hey, can I do check-in or whatever, but that's great, the RSVP. And here's another thing that you reminded me of, that like one of my discussions with a solo ager was, she called me because she was very emotional because she couldn't get a ride home. It was very difficult for her to get a ride home from a medical procedure. And she, I'm brainstorming with her, and I said, well, is there a village in your county? She lived in California, and she says, oh yeah, and I joined that. Other people suggested that. So I joined the village. And I was like, well, that's great. And then she got emotional again, and I said, hey, what's up? She goes, how pathetic is it? I had to join a club to get a ride from the doctors. And I said, I understand that, but I kind of did a little tough love. I said, would you get out there and start giving rides to other people? You can drive, and she did volunteer rides for 2 weeks and called me back, and she said, I think I met my new best friend. And so sometimes the best thing that we can do is to just get out there and help other people. It makes us feel better about our situation, and we might meet somebody along the way. Okay, the last step 3, maintain, be flexible, and celebrate. Share our needs with others, set healthy boundaries to prevent burnout and misunderstandings. Keep our eyes open to changes, ways that we can adapt our plan, and express gratitude and celebrate small and major contributions within our network and keep it strong and active. Here's when we don't have these conversations in advance, sometimes what happens is we have a healthcare concern, and it's those 2 or 3 people in our life that come to our rescue, and they sort of feel obligated, because we haven't had these conversations years in advance, okay? Those people, they may or may not really want to be there. They just feel obligated, but they're there, and that's where you want to create a network, and if you are in that situation with the 2 or 3 caregivers, it's just making sure they know how how much you appreciate them. To prevent burnout, we see this happen a lot. The other thing, how many folks in the room had kids? Okay, quite a few. Okay, here's something different about that we don't look at elder care the way that we look at child care. Like in child care, me and my wife did not write a check every time our kids needed care, okay? Friends, family, neighbors, different types of venues were doing things for kids, camps, things of that nature. And oftentimes these didn't cost any money. And that stretched our dollars when we had to pay for a babysitter, or had to pay for direct child care. And growing older and needing some assistance, there's nothing bad about it. Independence is not a weakness. Interdependence is something that's beautiful, that we're helping each other. And what we want to do is we want to have enough of a village so that we are getting free support, so that when and if we have to hire a care agency or pay for an Uber, it stretches our dollar a little bit longer. And that's one of the things that I love about building the personal village, is that it can provide us with support, and it can save us some money. Okay, so now we're going to talk about something that always comes up in a solo aging conversation, and that is healthcare proxies, financial proxies. Is that on a regular basis, talking to folks that identify as solo ager, it's sort of like, I don't have anybody to assign healthcare financial proxy. What do? And again, I don't have the magic wand, but I'm going to give you some tips that might help. Now, you can go, and you'll get this same tip when you go into the estate planning attorney, okay? So that solo ager that asks that question, the first thing the attorney's going to say is, well, let's think about who's in your life who serve in this capacity, and you're going to be paying them the $500 an hour. Now, if you do the building your personal village thing, you probably have a little bit of an idea of some people that might be a responsible healthcare and financial proxy. The most important thing is it's someone who understands and respects our healthcare wishes for healthcare proxy, and then for financial, someone who will handle our finances responsibly because they may have extensive control over it. And an important thing for people, whether you have family or not, like a lot of times the solo agers I talk to, oh, my friend, she's got her son and all these people, and the thing is, I could go talk to her friend, and her friend is sort of like, my son will never be the financial proxy for me. He would make the wrong decisions. Family is often chosen, but it's not mandatory. You can have a friend be a proxy or a professional if they're fit for the role. In fact, the other day I was talking to somebody who it's her best friend's nephew, because who she trusted, and he was up for the task, but both she and her friend were concerned because all of their friends are their age, and what we were talking about backup, she was concerned that if she assigned her best buddy to be her proxy, that she might be gone, and again, even the kid who's in his 20s could get hit by a car this afternoon. It can happen to anyone, but I understand, and I understand people not wanting to constantly change it. So here's the thing. A lot of times in our discussion, we'll say, okay, can you just give me a number of fiduciaries who I could call and get this done? And what I say to them is that I might be able to give you a few numbers, but right now you don't have a financial or healthcare proxy. So, there's no real rush in this. But what's really important is to develop a relationship with these people, whether they're paid or unpaid. You want them to, number one, be willing to do this job, and number two, they understand what your healthcare and financial wishes are. And so if we're in a situation where we're hiring a fiduciary, an attorney, a care manager, what I tell folks is interview a few folks, but then buy them lunch for a couple of months and get to know them, and don't be afraid to say this might not work out, and start over again. So now I'm going to give you a tip, especially for the professionals that I know this comes up a lot, is there's a way, like when you're working with somebody and they don't have anybody and they really want, they're willing to hire somebody to be their healthcare and financial proxy, or they're asking, so she was saying that some people will reach out and say, I want you to be my financial proxy or healthcare proxy. You could do that, look at the rules and go through the screening. And if you feel comfortable taking on that role, you could do it actually as a friend, But here's one really cool thing that I just learned a few months ago. So there's a profession called aging life care managers, and they're amazing. They're sort of like wedding planners for growing older, or if you like sports, they're quarterbacks, okay? And primarily nursing and social work professionals, and they are good at navigating all of this aging stuff that we're talking about. Many of them can effectively sign up to be a healthcare proxy for all of us, okay? They'll get to know you, they got your file. If you're in the hospital suddenly, incapacitated, they can come in and make healthcare decisions. They can't make financial decisions. That would not be right, that somebody who's in control of your healthcare is now got your checkbook, okay? But that same person, like if Mrs. Smith went to an attorney and said, hey, will you be my financial proxy? Will you write the checks and things like that? Many attorneys will be like, wait a second, that's a big responsibility. I don't know you that well. Let's figure this out, okay? However, if Ms. Smith goes into that same attorney's office and says, I need somebody to be my financial proxy. I have Cindy and her care management team as my healthcare proxy. Would you be open to being my financial proxy in that situation? And many attorneys and fiduciaries feel a lot more comfortable in that situation because they know that there's somebody guiding them on these healthcare decisions that they can. So it's sort of like Mrs. Smith is going to move to charter at Towson, and it's sort of like, okay, how much does that cost? Have you evaluated the cost of this compared to the others? Okay, I feel comfortable, writing a check for that. So I thought that was cool because for so long as we've been having these conversations, sometimes folks can feel really lost and they don't have somebody that can speak for them. Now, yesterday I was at a fundraiser, and this is the emphasis for all solo people to think about this. And think about, even if you're married and all that, and you got folks, we want to get some of this documentation together because what none of us want is to be have a court-appointed guardian, okay? And if we don't make these, if we don't make our needs known, that's sometimes what can happen. And it's heartbreaking, that a decision would need to be placed in the courts. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that like case manager or a case manager, it's okay to hire them for the case management of the health, but you shouldn't be hiring them also for the financial.
Or you do not hire that specific person for the health, but you can hire them for the financial, as long as those two roles don't overlap. Because I know people who are doing it dual. And
no. Okay, no. People can't have both of those roles. So a common thing would be an adult daughter might be a healthcare and a financial power. Okay, but let's say the solo ager who's outlived everybody in her family. There's nobody. We've exhausted every possible thing. One solution that I actually like this is an aging life care manager or patient advocate or even like an end-of-life doula, is doing the healthcare power of attorney, and that's separate. And then a financial fiduciary, elder law attorney, estate planning attorney, I think some banks, could be the financial aspect. So there's a real separation there.
Is there a law?
I don't think so. There's not a law. That was the question. There's not a law. Yeah.
Well, the roles are different, so there should be some sort of check and balance there. Okay, so for health, it's to do what the person wishes. For finance, it's to do what's in their best interest.
Yeah. And so to repeat, for the health, it's to do what the person wishes. So, the thing that we hear all the time is no heroic measures, like that's something that's in a lot of documentation. So it's what they wish and knowing, what mom, dad, or the person wish. But then, the finance is a tricky one because it's a judgment call. And that's why this idea of having the team where the care manager is sort of doing the research on what's the best thing for the client, and then saying to the fiduciary, I feel comfortable, writing this check for this service. So, but it's a tough one. Okay, lots of positive stuff we're talking about today, right? But okay. So I'm back on my first group of questions there. I think we talked about a lot of this stuff, but I'd love to engage y'all in any questions, comments, ideas. If you've got experiences that you'd like to share, please feel free to raise your hand or just shout out. Yeah.
To clarify, I work for a retirement community, but I cannot be my resident agent. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So works for a retirement community, and she's a social worker too. She can't be a healthcare agent. Now, that's great. That's a company policy. That's fantastic, and let's pray that there's not social workers out in places that are doing that, because they're a paying customer. That is not a clear separation, and hopefully this gives y'all like some thought, here. So, any other questions, comments? Yeah.
For your second point. There you go.
Hi, for the second question about a trustworthy person to pay bills in case of cognitive decline, in my experience, a daily money manager is a perfect, and I've looked it up and shown people what does that mean, what is their association, what is the criteria, because it's kind of unique.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm going to review all these questions, make sure I answered them. But okay, so daily money managers are a profession a lot of people have never heard of. They're in the source book there, but they're not accountants, they're not CPAs. They are basically like bookkeepers for individuals. And we've all known somebody, or we may have experienced it. Let's say that you spent a couple of weeks in the hospital, you're not feeling well, you're getting your rehab at home, and there's a pile of bills there, on the desk. And then people start calling and stuff like that. This is a great situation where a daily money manager works out very well. But oftentimes we like suggesting just knowing that they exist in advance. Like, it could be as simple as eyesight and not, wanting to, read the bills and things like that. And nowadays, a lot of the vendors that we use will refuse to give us printed bills. Okay, you got and so sometimes the daily money managers are hired now just simply to navigate the online billing system for the client. Now, here's the thing that I love about daily money managers. I've not talked to a daily money manager yet that hasn't averted fraud for almost every one of their clients, because most fraud is being committed against older adults and very vulnerable when it comes to this. But the daily money manager is looking at the check register, looking at the credit cards, looking at all this stuff. And most of these daily money managers are just blown away at how much, con man attempts are coming at their clients. Okay, so we talked about ways to have medical power of attorney. We talked about bill paying. We talked about, thanks to you get 2 gold stars today, daily money managers and being an introvert. Let's see, help with solo's personal care, comfort, medical care with limited finances and possibly dementia. So, this is where that question relates to when we're in a caregiving role, when we see our next door neighbor that is, might have financial challenges and trying to help them. And what my recommendation is, help them sort of cultivate this personal village. Got a great story. I talked to this young man not too long ago. This guy, he needs an award. This kid, who's in his mid-20s now, when he was a teenager, he worked at a health club and became friends with one of the patrons going to the health club. And now this guy is living on his own. He has no family and he's isolated. And this kid is his connection. And he's building a personal village for this gentleman with his friends. He has somehow made it cool for these 20-year-olds to come and visit this guy, and it's just amazing. But I think that's what it's going to take, folks. With all these budget cuts, with all the wacky world out there, as expensive as some things are getting, that helping people build their personal village. And please discuss options for continuing care for solo agers. One thing that this is not an advertisement for communities like this. But even though I love communities like this, like I said, I moved in and I lived in 5 of these communities. Every time I went home, I felt lonely, even though I went home to my family, because I had all my buddies around me and everything's in close proximity. It was amazing. And I say that even the folks that bicker at each other in the dining room and seem like they hate each other, they probably like each other more than me and my neighbors. Me and my neighbors, we're friendly, but none of us are sharing lawnmowers. We're not doing anything. We're all on an island, okay? But communities like this are an amazing solution for solo agers. But I'm going to go back to my lady who's getting emotional about joining the village and not getting a ride. Like I said to her multiple times on the conversation, have you ever thought about moving to a community? Because everything you're talking about is solved just because you moved into the community. Oh, no, I can't do that. You know, like it was more of a personal pride thing. And I've had that conversation multiple times is that when we identify as a solo ager, if our circumstances let us, you move into a community like this, you're not a solo ager anymore. You got family, you got a ride to the doctor's appointment, you got people that care about you. And so that's, when we talk about continuing care, that's, one of the solutions. I know it's hard. It's hard for people. The phrase I hear more than any other phrase is, I'm not ready yet, And usually when people are ready, then it's like, oh, we don't have a space, or you don't qualify to live here anymore, okay? As a couple, when do you talk about and prepare for solo aging? Every marriage and partnership is different, but coming up with ways to talk about this with our partners is important. And the easiest way to do it is not to sort of say, hey, honey, if I die, let's talk about what your life looks like, or vice versa. It's more, oh, wow, Mrs. Smith down the street, her husband just passed away. I wonder what that life is like for her. Do you ever think about something like this? There's better ways that we can frame this when we talk to our partners. So, okay, yeah.
The future, really excited about the assistive technologies that are coming down in the future. What can we look forward to there, and how can aging in solo...
The question was about smart home technology in helping solo agers, but helping all of us. One of the coolest things, you got to be brave enough to let the CIA listen in on all your conversations, is Alexa and Google. But, it's great. I mean, you wake up, you could have a bad case of cataracts and you got books read to you. You got, the weather today. You can call your kids. Like, there's a lot of technology that isn't the I've fallen and I can't get up device that can help us as we're growing older. And it's getting better and better. And there are sensors and things like that can help make sure that, mom is okay. I talked to a company just the other day, like some of the sensors, they kind of go overboard. We're going to put a sensor in every bedroom. We're going to see how many times you go to the bathroom, and it's going to trigger this. One company, they just have a sensor in the kitchen. And it's sort of like, if mom doesn't go to the kitchen by 11 o'clock, then I'm going to give her a call. And so sometimes simplicity, and this is the problem, is that in the tech world, they want to make stuff really small and really high tech, and sometimes it gets too complicated. So another thing that I think that surprised me was, there's these guys out there, they started this company called the Raz Mobility Phone. It's a phone for people with dementia. It's basically, they created the most simple phone on the planet. Just a few little buttons, anybody could use this thing. I was like, man, I don't know if that's gonna work. Well, they've sold tens of thousands of these things, and I honestly think some days I'd like to be using something like that, because our phones are way too complicated, so, and then another tech thing that I love is go-go grandparents. And so go-go grandparents, they realize that it's very difficult to hire an Uber or a Lyft ride. Like, you can't call a number. Even those of us who know how to do it, if your driver's not there, I can't call my driver. I got to go through some, switchboard or whatever. Go-go grandparents, you could literally call an Uber on a rotary dial telephone. And they match you up with drivers that say that they want to work with older adults, and they'll call you the next day and make sure your ride was okay. So those are a couple of, yeah. So we could talk all day, and I'll recommend a charter to have somebody come in, talk about tech and stuff like that.
Steve.
Yeah, okay, so her question was RAS Mobility. It's R-A-Z Mobility. You can look it up on Google. And what makes it different than the Jitterbug and all the, T-Mobile 55 plus discount phones is that they have created an interface on a regular, I think it's a Samsung, that is just, it's got big buttons with like a picture of your son or a picture of, the hospital or whatever. And it's just very simple. You buy it from Raz, and then you've got your regular phone subscription. Yep.
I don't know if okay. So last year at a meeting through Charter, we went to DSSI warehouse, and they have all the latest technology that's coming out in senior living, to the point of for UTIs being able to track that from the toilet, all kinds of new things that are coming out. So I would tell you that technology is way advanced and what's coming out to manage those things. In our dining room, we have robots. They're named Tom and Jerry, and they deliver the meals to the residents. They stay warm, they get there fast, and there's just all kinds of technology coming out about that. So we at Charter are looking into these things to bring into our communities. This was a pilot community for the robots. Yep. Yeah. And so there's so much out there, and it's amazing and small, like not large things at all. So,
yeah, and we all see in the news how the people that work in this community and the people that are here that work in this field, nobody comes into this field if they don't have a big heart and they want to help people. We just don't have enough of those people that are out there. And so supplementing the technology with our real life care, another crazy bit of technology that kind of blew my mind is these AI conversational folks. And there was one of our vendors, they basically call the client to talk about their life story, and it creates a memoir. And so every day it's like, hey, tell me about your first job. And what they found in their beta test is that some people were talking to the companion for 2.5 hours, and it's an AI companion, but here's the beauty, I talk to it too, and it doesn't roll its eyes. I found I was using all my best manners. It's like, it's a device, but I'm like, I'm sorry, but I gotta go, But the other cool thing is that they cited less loneliness and isolation talking to this like robot-like device, So it's crazy.
I also think you need to, like, if you have Xfinity or Comcast, you have to ask them what resources they have, because they have remotes for seniors that are phenomenal. Bianca was just up here saying that the residents had it. I had it for my mom, and it was the difference in her being able to manage the TV and not. And versus me having a picture on my phone of what a remote was and would tell her what button to push.
So I think this was a good talk, y'all. I want to thank you again for having me. And I'll hang out for a little bit. I'm going to try to eat as much food as I can before I have to drive back to,
Just for a moment, guys, before you all leave here today, there are Bianca and Carissa are going to be handing out, we have cards for you. We are having a podcast with Steve on September 4th at 12 o'clock. The QR code is on the back of the card. It's remote, so if you know of people that could benefit from this, if you leave this presentation today and have questions that come up, you can then use that. I'll let Steve talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and basically, I'm experimenting with a new format on with our discussions, And what we're going to do is just basically, I'm going to talk, it's going to be hard, but I'm just going to talk for maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes on the topic of solo aging, and then it's just going to be an open forum, and that's that card. So great follow-up, because after this talk today, you all have questions, you have ideas that you're reflecting on.